Tired of testing files, juggling spreadsheets, and writing emails? Quoting 3D prints shouldn't feel like a chore. What if you could focus on the parts of 3D printing you actually enjoy? Introducing Autoquote3D, a super affordable auto quoting and workflow platform built for your 3D printing service business. With instant, accurate quotes customized to your printers and materials, your customers get what they need in seconds through a sleek, easy-to-use interface that makes quoting to finalizing an order a breeze. Integrating Autoquote3D is simple. Just drop one code snippet into your existing website and you're ready to go. Set your pricing rules once and let our smart algorithm handle the heavy lifting. You stay in control of the prices without spending time on manual calculations. The intuitive dashboard keeps projects moving smoothly, whether approving orders or tracking progress. Plus, with secure payment processing built in, you'll never have to worry about chasing invoices. Running a 3D printing on demand business just got easier. Switch to Autoquote3D today and spend more time printing and less time coding.
Hey guys, it's Ken here from Talk3D. Welcome back to another podcast of ours. On Talk3D, we talk about wonderful things developing in the 3D printing world. And today I have with me Felix Izraitel from Autoquote3D. He's the co-founder of Autoquote3D, and he's built an amazing piece of software that I think anybody who does 3D printing can attest is going to be very useful in their 3D printing business. Felix, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So first of all, Felix, let's hear a little bit about you. Where did you come from? Why did you build a piece of software like this?
Yeah. So when I graduated university, I decided I'm not going to use my mechanical engineering degree to get a job, a real job, let's say that. And I decided to open up a 3D service bureau, and I ran that for about a year. It was semi-successful, but ultimately I decided to drop it. But at that time, I just had a huge exposure to the 3D printing world, obviously, to how things work, the automatic quoting software that's out there. And, and that was like 5-6 years ago at this point. And it just got left the way it did. Eventually I joined Shop3D. And that was, I think it was like 2-3 years. And again, took a lot of more exposure to the 3D printing world in a different angle. And then I branched out and decided to do a career swap to software engineering. And then 3 years ago, and eventually I got I got back to the roots, and I said, you know what, like, I think there's still a gap in the market. And then that's why I built Autoquote3D.
That's right. Yeah, we go way back to our Shop3D days. It seemed like it's a long time ago, but it's only been 3 years, as you were mentioning. But you've come a long way. You've done a lot of different things, learned a lot about the industry, and really kind of put yourself out there and enhanced, what your offer is to the world. I want to talk a little bit about your conception for this piece of software, because, and I'm going to get you to kind of explain what it does also, but why do you think that this was the thing that you could focus on? Because there's so many things that you can focus on nowadays. There's all sorts of AI, widgets here and there. Why did you focus on kind of building this 3D printing tool again?
Yeah, so I'm a builder, and I like to make stuff. I like to learn new things, and I like to be busy with things that interest me. So Autoquote3D wasn't like my original idea. That was not like the first idea that I built. I built a bunch of other stuff. We're not going to mention here, but with actually a bunch of different people, software related. And then eventually, through experiencing kind of like what it's like to build something for somebody else, like an actual user that might pay for this, I decided that, maybe, and through, reading a little bit online and books, that maybe the best way to use my software engineering skill is to focus on something that I have a lot of context in, which is 3D printing. Like I still have a really deep understanding on how that industry works. And I still think that was a gap, to create a instant quoting software, so that was affordable. All right. So there's a lot of solutions out there that, are not affordable, to the regular small or medium sized business. That cost, thousands of dollars a month. And I decided that wasn't like, why is that the status quo, right? Like, why can't I build something that was much, much cheaper than that, around $20 a month, price range. And that's how I think Autoquote3D came to be. I built a very simple proof of concept that I then actually showed you guys and a bunch of other businesses. And the feedback was really good. They're like, this is going to work for me. This might work for me. If you make these tweaks, it actually, I'm going to use it right away. And then the question was, how much is it going to cost? And through my experience as a software engineer, I found a way to make it not cost $1,000 a month with a bunch of overhead for the software. And eventually, the price point right now is around the $20 a month as a starting point. And it's working really well. The projections for what it's going to cost on the back end are still on track. And I don't see a reason why the price might jump to $1,000 a month, like these other businesses out there did. So yeah, long story short, I use my contacts in the 3D printing world to then drive what I want to build next. And eventually that came to be Autoquote3D. And that's where we are today. There's a bunch of customers already and really good feedback, and the software is improving and growing.
Yeah, it's an exciting piece of software, especially if you're a 3D printing service. I mean, if you're not, then you may not be interested in something like this. But for those who know, who've been quoting customers manually for years, the amount of time that your piece of software will save them is going to be phenomenal. I want to talk a little bit about the software, and why we think it's so great. But let's hear it from you. What does Autoquote3D do? Primarily, what problems does it solve? And what are some of the features that you think you've put in that really make it special and stand out?
All great questions. You might have to remind me of those. But I would say let's start at the beginning of who the software is for. The software is not really for the business. Obviously it is. And the business is what drives the revenue and all those things, and the business uses it in the back end. But ideally, ultimately, it's for the customer. It's for the person that logs onto your website or your service and goes on there and wants to make something, right? So right now, if you don't have the money to invest into an automatic quoting software, your customers have to go on your website, and I'm sure you're familiar with this at Shop3D. Yep, they have to go on your website, they have to make a request, upload a file, maybe fill out a simple or complicated form, and then wait for somebody to get back to them, right? That, depending on how fast you are, that can take between an hour, a day, 2 days, 3 days. If it's over the weekend, they have to wait until Monday, right? So ultimately, Autoquote3D is for the customer. It's for them to have an amazing experience when they come on your 3D printing service bureau, right? So if a customer can go on your website, get an instant quotation, make the payment, and then, they are hands off at that point, I would say that's what I would want. I think that is the industry standard for literally any other type of industry, like insurance. If you want to go on the Nike store, you're not making a request for quote, you're just buying the thing. And I think that's what Autoquote3D is all about, is providing an amazing customer experience. At the same time, obviously improving your business in terms of, lead generation and conversion and all of those things.
I think even just that first step you mentioned in terms of filling out that contact form and asking for a quote, there's so many things in between that can go wrong with that customer. They don't know what materials you have. They don't know, their file may not be correct for printing. There's just so many things that can go wrong even before that first contact email gets started. And you might be starting off on the wrong foot. If they don't have a file, it's certainly hard to quote. And if they don't know what materials or technologies to choose, then they're just going, it's going to go back and forth before we even get close to a quote. And I think that's one of the pain points that we've clearly identified here at Shop3D that we needed absolute help on. And I think even if you're talking about just the basics of that software for the customer end, it certainly solves a huge percentage of that, because now we're getting requests for quotes that are pretty much ready to go. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, what else it does, but for the business side as well, because for Talk3D, we really gear this towards industry. Now, the customer has a great experience requesting a quote. How does a business benefit from using Autoquote3D as well?
Yeah, but a bunch of benefits. Number one, you are probably, we don't have the direct statistics, and I don't want to lie, but you're probably, with an instant quotation tool, you're generating a lot more leads So maybe people go on there and they put a quote in, and they don't go through with it. But at the same time, they had to sign in. They had to make an account, which is, by the way, very seamless. All you got to do is put in your email and you get a code, and that's as much as the customer has to do. So from that point, you get a lead, and not a lot. Maybe your conversion rate right now is 0.5%. It might go to 3%, 5% or more, because you can now take advantage of those people that, went on there and never kind of completed their purchase. So as a business, you get more leads. The flip side of this is like, you also get to filter out your kind of like, how would you call it? Like, uninterested customers. So I'm sure that a lot of 3D printing service,
unprepared leads, there's unprepared, their files are not ready, or they're just not prepared for the cost of 3D printing.
Exactly. Yeah. Or unprepared leads. So like if somebody goes on there and they put in like a little widget that they think is going to cost $1, and then they get something that's, maybe $50, right? Like, cause maybe that's for SLA 3D printing. You have a bunch of setup costs, cleaning, et cetera, et cetera. They're automatically kind of like filtered out. So like, you as a business are going to spend more time printing, and more printing means more money. More growth for your business, and less time quoting and going back and forth with these leads that are probably never going to convert, right? So that's the other kind of benefit to the business. Now, we talked a lot about the quoting and like generating leads, but also you get a software that fully manages the workflow from like the quote to payment to, shipping to marking an order as paid. And all of that happens in the back end. So now you don't, the regular management of 3D printing service bureau is very manual. You get a quote, you convert that quote, you possibly, you convert that quote, and then it goes into some backend somewhere where you either have to track it in your head, or you put it on an Excel sheet and then you have to update it manually and so on and so forth. Autoquote3D does all that for you, right? So you get, once you get the order, it goes into paid, and then from there you can start moving it in the pipeline, right? So from paid, it goes to printing, to printed, to maybe quality control, to ready for pickup, ready for shipping, and then ultimately into the done pile. And you get to do all that, but just by clicking some buttons. You select the order, you mark it as this, you mark it as picked up or printed, and automatically also you get a direct communication with the client. So anytime that there's an update on their order, they get a notification saying, hey, we have processed your order and now it's printing, right? So they get automatic feedback about what's going on, which is often not the case, because usually, from our experience, or my experience at least, a customer gets to pay, and then maybe 3 days later they get hey, this is picked up, but now you have a customer experience that's a lot better because the customer is involved and engaged in every step of your order.
That sounds great, Felix. So tell me, in terms of designing the software, how long did it take you in terms of kind of putting the framework together? How long did you consult with other parties about, what features people wanted? How did you get all the nitty-gritty into a pretty polished piece of software?
Yeah, I would say the proof of concept probably only took about a month. But that's, proof of concept does not mean production ready software. So proof of concept was, hey, we can slice these files online. We can do FDM, we can do SLA, we can do SLS. But now there's like a whole ecosystem that you have to build on top of it. The slicing part and the pricing of the parts is a very, very small piece of the software. There's the management part from the business end. There's the customer end. There is, allowing the customers to see their previous quotes and orders and all those things that make a software whole, right? As well as payments, right? Like we use Stripe for payments, and that's secure, and we want to make sure that's polished as well. So I would say like the proof of concept took about a month, and then it probably took another 3 to 4 months to really start polishing it, talking with people, making sure that the features that people want are there. People also love to make recommendations. They love trying to customize the software to their end, especially as like alpha or beta users. They have a lot of say. They're very passionate. So I would say like start to finish, it was probably a 5 to 6 months effort. However, it's not like I started from scratch, over the years, in the past 3 years or so, I did dabble into trying to make the software. I feel like I just never had the vision up until very recently. Yeah.
Awesome. And now I can see that on your website, you have 3 different tiers. You have a starter, a professional, a service bureau, and actually there's a 4th tier that doesn't have pricing on it yet for enterprise. Could you tell me in terms of those tiers, what types of customers do you expect to sign on to those particular tiers so that we can have a good idea in terms of where people are in the 3D printing service business should be looking at?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like I said before, Autoquote3D is designed to be very affordable to any type of business. Doesn't matter if you're like huge with like 200 printers in your farm and you're generating like 100 orders a day, or you're just getting started. Maybe you got a 3D printer, maybe you have 2, and you're just looking to make some side money, or maybe you're just trying to see where this goes as a side hustle for yourself. So that's why we have the starter. The starter is really made for people that are just like dipping their toes in. Maybe they just want to see how the software works, right? So you have the full set of features. However, we limit the customer, or in this case, the business, to 50 quotes a month. Now, the next tier over is the pro, which is really where I think and where most of the customers right now are at. That opens up, unlimited quotes, again, all the different functionality of the software. And then you have the service bureau. That would be for somebody or for a business that has quite a bit of people working in the business. Maybe they have more than one storefront. So, you can create more than one if you have 2 locations over the world. If you have multiple people using the software, you can grant permissions to those people to manage and run quotes or manage orders and so on. And then the last one is enterprise. Enterprise is really meant to be as a catch-all for people that need a very customized solution on top of what we already have. So maybe you're a university or library and you require like very fine tuning to the software to make it your own. Or, you're a really, really large business that has a very specific way of doing things. That's, again, the kind of, the tier that we would catch those type of customers. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think there is enough for everybody to kind of get their feet wet in terms of getting this piece of software to help drive their business. Now, I want to throw out a couple of 3D printing, technical, and sales things at you. And give me a straight answer in terms of, if your software can help me with it or not. And the reason why I say this is because, I've been in this 3D printing for a long time, over 10 years. So there's I'm a pretty demanding person in terms of what I would like in a piece of 3D printing quoting software. So I'm just going to throw some at you. And then, give me your take on how you handle that with Autoquote3D. Ready?
Yes.
All right. What's the average time to get a quote on Autoquote3D?
Good question. It ranges, but the mean medium is around 20 seconds. So if you upload a part, It uploads, depending on your internet speed. Let's assume that that's really fast. And then it quotes, and that takes usually 20, 30 seconds.
That's amazing. What types of technologies does Autoquote3D support for 3D printing?
Yeah, so right now it's FDM, SLA, and SLS.
And how many quotes, is there a limit to how many people can be on your quoting site and getting a quote?
There is no limit. Our software will scale automatically, so your customers should never see any delay.
All right, do I have to give you a percentage of my printing profits?
No.
In terms of countries that you support, can I use Autoquote3D all over the world? Is there a limitation to where I am and what types of currency I can take in?
The short answer is no, there are no limitations. The more detailed answer is natively we support every country and currency that Stripe supports. Stripe also has the ability to, if you're not in those countries, Stripe will allow you to create a US bank account and use any currency you want to fund that account. But that takes an extra step. So if you're in a country that Stripe doesn't support natively, you can still make an account and use Autoquote3D. There's just a little bit more setup.
Okay, so it's really a payments limitation more than Autoquote's limitation for geography. I want to ask about, on the thread of finance, how are payments handled on Autoquote3D, and how is customer information kept safe?
Good question. So there are two systems at play here. There's the Autoquote3D system. Everything there is encrypted. We never save any customer details outside of your name, email, and if you make a password, your password. The flip side of this is that Stripe has to manage all that. That Stripe manages all that for us in terms of like payments, addresses, and all of those things that are very important for customers. And we trust Stripe, and I think the world in general trusts Stripe to keep that information safe and secure. So to sum that up, we never store any of your like credit card information or anything like that on our databases ever. We don't want to. We never will. We let Stripe handle all of that. And in terms of payment, you go through the regular Stripe checkout. That is how we have it right now. And you might be very familiar with what that looks like already, because most people either use Shopify or Stripe, and the interfaces are very similar.
Now, you must have a lot of views on this, but in terms of a single customer looking to get quotes, do you know on average how often or how many quotes they typically get from one session per se?
It seems to me, from kind of a holistic view of looking at the data, is most customers will get one or two quotes in a session. There will be a small portion. There's this 80-20 rule. There will be a small portion of your customers that come back and get more quotes and make more orders. But for the most part, it seems that at least the trend right now, and our sample size is fairly small, so it's not representative of the world and how things will be in a year. But it seems that a lot of people will come on your quoting on your quoting widget, maybe make a quote, maybe pay, maybe not, and then you'll probably never see them. But a lot of customers that will be returning customers anyway will come back and get more quotes. I hope that answers the questions. But every service is different, every demographic is different, every geographical area is different. So results may vary on that one.
Sounds fair to me. Now, I have a whole bunch of different printers. You know, I have some hobbyist printers. I have some Bamboos. I have some more industrial printers like the SLS for the Fuse 1. How does Autoquote handle all of the different printers and materials you might have, and kind of, letting the customer choose all of the different technologies, whether it's, SLA and this material or that material? How do you handle that whole portfolio of materials available for customers to choose?
Yeah, this was a decision early on. The short answer is we don't. We don't care what printers you have. We just care what technologies you can print in, because every technology is obviously a little bit different. So all you need to do on the business end, on the configuration of your materials, is just add that material. So for example, you go on, you select your technology, FDM, you say, hey, this is PLA. You need to input a few different details on that material, like infill, cost, and all those things, and then it's just set up. You also have the ability to say, how big you can print things on. So, for example, if your biggest printer is 500 by 500 by 500, you might have that setting apply to all of your materials, except maybe ABS and ASA, where you can go in there and say, hey, these two materials, I'm going to limit the size to like 200 by 200 by 200, just giving some numbers. So again, we don't handle your printers at all. You don't connect anything. It's a very kind of technology and printer agnostic system. Not to say that this might not change in the future. maybe we do want to onboard printers and allow you to, maybe send prints off to a printer somehow. But at this point, we decided that that's a whole other software by itself that we don't want to do. We just want to handle your day-to-day quoting and orders and nothing else. And I think that allows you to figure out what you want to do with your printers with a different tool or however you do it now.
I wanted to ask you about what happens after you get a sale. So let's say it's 6 a.m. in the morning. Someone went through to get a quote and they decided to go ahead and kind of check out with that quote. I'm still sleeping at this point, but I've made a sale. But then I open it up and I think, oh man, I don't know if I want to print this one. It looks really difficult, or maybe I don't have that material available. How does Autoquote3D handle jobs where I may not want to accept? Is there like an escrow period or something in between where I can kind of accept or reject prints? Or does it automatically pay out and I have to refund the customer? How do we handle that?
Mm-hmm. So this is a great question, because in the beginning, the way that I was designing the software is like full automatic. We don't care what happens. We force you to accept every order. However, speaking to customers, that was not quite what they wanted. They said, I don't want to accept every order. I want to at least take a look at what I'm going to accept, because as you may know, not everything is printable and you may not want to print everything. So what we've done on the back end is allow the business to select from 3 options. Fully manual, which means that the customer interface is basically a glorified form where people upload their parts, select their materials, and the next step they do is like, hey, I need a quote. So you can set it that way. Most people don't use that. Then we have what we call assisted. So assisted is you take the payment, right? So the customer puts in their credit card information and all of those things. And what we do is we put a hold on that amount. So say the order is $100. We simply put a hold on that amount. We don't charge the customer just yet. It's just authorized on their credit card or debit card, whatever it is. And then from there, you get a notification as the business and you say, hey, you have a new order you need to review. You go on there and then you say, okay, yeah, this is good. You click accept. It goes ahead and charges the customer. And then you can do whatever you got to do from there, or you can decline that order. And, it just simply takes the hold off of their payment method and it's like nothing happens. Or the third setting is fully automatic, kind of like I mentioned before, where the customer just gets charged. And then if the business does not want to handle that order, they can refund the customer. However, as you may know, with all of these payment providers, when you take payment, Stripe or whatever payment processor you use will take a portion of that money. And you do not get it back with a refund when you refund the customer, that is. However, with assisted mode, you don't actually charge the customer, which means that if the customer got authorized for $100, they get back $100. And as the business, you don't eat any of that processing fee that Stripe or Shopify might charge.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And that was kind of what I was getting at, because sometimes for us, we're like, oh, I don't know if we want to print that. That's a little bit too difficult for us to do that. Or we just don't have the time to rush and get that done. Actually, that brings up a good point. Are customers able to choose anything outside of materials, infill, and print settings? What kind of options do they have in terms of setting up shipping options or other like post-processing if someone needs their prints polished or something like that? What kind of options do we have?
Yeah, so it's a big question, but for shipping options, you set up shipping options. Everything is a flat fee right now. We are getting feedback saying, we do want dynamic, but at this point, we're not prioritizing that because most businesses work on flat shipping anyway. So, you just set up your flat shipping options, whatever it is, FedEx or UPS, USPS, whatever it is you want to do. On the urgency option, there was feedback saying, we want customers to be able to select from the urgency option. So for example, if a customer just does not care when the sprint gets done, it can take 10 business days, they can select no rush. And maybe as the business, you say, okay, people that select no rush get a little 5% discount or $5 discount. You can select, you can put urgency option as standard, put some descriptors, and then you can also put an urgency option that, is like expedited. And then you might charge the client, 50% more because you might deprioritize other jobs to get their job done, basically putting them at the top of the queue. So you can do that. Customers can also leave notes. And as for post-processing, that is currently not supported, but it is in development, and we expect that to be out within a month or so.
Yeah, I think it must be hard to do couriers if you're supporting countries all over the world if they're not using, FedEx, USPS, and UPS, so forth. So I kind of understand why there would be some limitation there. But in terms of after I get an order, so let's say, I've been doing this for a while, so I already have a whole bunch of customers, and now I'm putting this new Autoquote software in between. Is there a way to do custom orders? And if so, because I don't want my previous customers who've already sent a design with me to go through an auto quoting system and to push them off that, relationship that we've built together for so long. Is there a way to kind of have these customers go through a more streamlined process instead of going through the front end?
Yeah. So as the business, you can do the quotes for your customers. So for example, if you built a relationship where somebody sends you an email, you quote their parts, you maybe send a PO, something like that, right? Purchase order. You can still do that in Autoquote3D. So as the person that's processing that quote or order, you'll go on Autoquote3D. There's a separate backend for this use case specifically. You basically make the quotes. It auto quotes it, and then you can either send that quote to the customer and they can pay with credit card, or you can say, hey, I'm going to process this payment offline in some shape or form, and you can do that as well, and that will turn that quote into an order, and you can kind of the customer that you've built a relationship with this will never know this is happening. They will, however, if you want to, they will get the notification that the order is going through the pipeline. So that's kind of a nice to have anyway for them.
All right, the next question is probably going to be my last quickfire question at you, and it's going to be a doozy because I want to ask you if there's a secret sauce in how you are slicing and pricing prints, because we've all had that trouble of trying to develop our own formula, our own algorithm, our own super duper Excel spreadsheet to try to figure out what things should cost and what exceptions should be factored in. How are you, if you can tell me, slicing and pricing prints? What is the philosophy?
So whenever a customer uploads a part, we do actually slice it in the cloud. We get back some information about that part in terms of how much filament you're going to be using. We then take that and then process it through the formula that the business has set. The formula is very simple. It's either a linear line, or you can curve it so you can reward customers for ordering more. So that's there. It's as simple as that. There's nothing to it. For SLS, we do run a packing algorithm that will kind of pack the parts as efficiently as possible and then give the client the best possible quote. That will be an algorithm that we improve over time because that's actually a very hard problem. People threw a lot of money into that problem already outside of Autoquote3, of course, if you do some research. So no secret sauce, nothing very complex, just a very straightforward thing. It's almost like what you would do in real life, but we do it for you automatically.
Got it. And one other thing, we don't have an MJF printer right now, but we might be thinking of one in the future, or at least trying something out. Will that be something that you'll be adding to the mix, or any other technologies that might be budding around the corner?
Yeah, definitely. I think MJF is next on the list of technologies to add, and then basically any other 3D printing technology will be available as well.
Well, I think we've covered a lot, and I'm pretty satisfied with your answers so far, but what have you got in the future in store for us? Can you give us a hint of what might be down the roadmap? I know we talked about MJF, but what other things do you think might be helpful to businesses and customers in getting their quotes and getting deals through the pipeline?
It's a good question. There is a very big idea floating around. And I want to just preface this thing, the way that I work in Autoquote3D and everybody involved works is we put the end customer first, and then we work backwards from there. So we put ourselves into their shoes, and then we think, okay, what would they kind of want what would be nice for them. Maybe we'll talk to some of them as well in the future. And there are plans for that to get even more insight. But the idea that is floating around is again, and I'm sorry to throw out AI in here, but it's an AI assisted quoting flow for the customer. So basically what we would do is, the customer might upload a part and we would automatically recommend the correct material for it or make some suggestions around it. The customer will also be able, if they don't know what material they want to use, the customer will also be able to just chat with some kind of 3D printing service, or rather 3D printing industry guru that knows everything about materials and applications, and then recommend a material that is within the business's portfolio, right? So, if you don't have PETG as a business, the AI chatbot won't recommend it. That is something that I really want to implement. But we want to do it right. And I don't think that is, right now at least, not the place we want to focus in. But that is definitely coming, I think, in 2025.
That's amazing. That's pretty exciting. I think I would love something like that. Although right now, if you implement this on your site, technically someone could just hit the chat button and get some help anyway, because it just embeds directly into your website. But having some AI to automate things even further, especially something that's more intelligent and saying, hey, you should combine this with this, would be really useful. I mean, those are things that we say to our customers all the time. I wouldn't do that. It's a little bit big, or, I wouldn't combine these settings together. That's kind of too weak for the walls and so forth. So I think that's a great addition in the future. Hopefully that gets implemented in the near future. But overall, I think this is just a fantastically put together package, something that's really useful in this space. I want to ask you, are there any other 3D printing demands or needs that you've heard from your customers that's maybe outside of this, but related to 3D printing that you might be excited in pursuing?
It's an interesting question. I think, again, kind of coming from the customer's point of view, is you always want to, for example, if you upload a part, right, and the customer is not, maybe the designer, the customer, the engineer, whoever it is, maybe they're not designing for the manufacturing method, with 100% kind of, with like a clear picture of what they're doing, basically. Maybe they're new to 3D printing. It would be really cool to create something, and maybe I think there are some ideas out there around this. It would be really cool to create something where you upload your STL or step file, whatever it is, and we process it through something, and we give you a designed for 3D printing version of that part. I think that would be a really cool thing, and that's like a product by itself, obviously. But that is something that I think will come at some point. I don't know if we'll make it, but it will be out there for sure at some point. I hope that answers that question. I did want to ask you, Ken. It's out in the wild now publicly that Shop3D is a partner, like a actual stakeholder partner in Autoquote3D, and you guys help us help Autoquote3D reach the market and hit the ground running. I did want to ask you, why did you come aboard?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I mean, other than I've already known you for so many years, realistically, it's just a very synchronous event. I mean, I remember one of the first tasks that Jackie and I gave you with your engineering mind was to kind of build a quoter for us. And of course, just like everybody else in the industry, we started off with a complicated Excel sheet. But the problem with that is, as good as it was for that time, even though volume was low, when you pass it on to someone else in the department, when you pass it on to another party or whatever, it gets complicated because no one remembered how we put together that sheet. We don't remember why things are priced that way. And the next person just goes, I guess that's the price, and moves things along. And it could be wrong. And I remember there was one time we were like, wow, this value on that spreadsheet was wrong. It was wrong for 2 years and we didn't notice. and we didn't know why people were not choosing that or whatnot, it just becomes a very big mess. And the other thing was the quoting to actual print rate was extremely low. The amount of times that you have to go back and forth to get just the beginning requisite information to quote sometimes would take 3 to 4 email exchanges just to get the file, what scale it was, what materials they want, what materials we had that they could choose from. And by that time, when they get that first quote back, they're like, oh wow, that's so expensive. I didn't expect that. I'm not interested anymore. And that really killed us. That just killed our tech team's momentum in terms of working with customers, because now in their mind, they're going to spend all this work trying to get that information from the customer, and it's not going to convert, or only 1 in 20 might convert. So they're spending 19 emails times however many correspondences back and forth just to get that one order in, and it just became a really difficult thing. So the primary purpose, I would say, is just because we really wanted this for ourselves, and if you really wanted something for yourself and it's really going to help your business, we want to invest in it also. And that's the main reason, is that we just saw so much potential in it because we felt so much pain doing it another way. And we did look at other options as well, but for us, which didn't have a tremendous volume of prints every day, it didn't really make that much sense to deploy such an expensive piece of software. So we just needed this, and that's why I was trying to be extra influential in getting some of these ideas across for the inception of it, to make sure that it really fills the gap for what 3D printing service bureaus, 3D printing small businesses really needed for their purpose. So I think, in a most long-winded way ever, we loved it so much that we wanted to be a part of it. And I think that's the core of what small business should be. You gotta love it, so you can work on it every day, and you wanna show the world, and you wanna do it in a way where you don't have that corporate pressure to just sell. You can have that meaningful conversations with customers, and we saw all of that in Autoquote, and that's why we went along with it.
So from a business perspective, maybe just for other people and entrepreneurs or people that want to be entrepreneurs, when you choose a partner in a business, what do you look for? You're a veteran, I would say, in entrepreneurship. You have a gazillion businesses, and you have another one. What do you look for in a partner? Like, why did you? I'm sure other people brought up this idea. Maybe you talked to other engineers that could have done this. Obviously we have a relationship, but like in just like a high level view, what do you look for in a partner, to join in on a venture like this?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think people ask themselves that enough when they go into a venture. And I think that's the first question that you're going to ask yourself is, what do you value? And kind of go from there. So for us, even though we had that prior relationship, that really helped us think about what you were able to contribute and what we could contribute. What I like to do as an entrepreneur is to make sure that my contribution is very different than what your contribution is, so that we don't step on each other's toes, and we can also help each other out in areas where we're not strong or one of us is not strong in. So I really like that complementary partnership. Second of all, trust. When entering that business partnership, you're going to spend time on the business. You're both going to spend time. You're going to both have opposing views. You're going to have similar views, but you really have to trust the other person. And what I mean by that is that you guys can resolve disagreements in a favorable, honest, and direct way. Because that's going to come up for sure. And you want to make sure that you guys can have a conversation about it, and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I disagree with you, but we should do it this way, because I think that makes the most sense for our customers, and so forth, and kind of have that trust factor. So I think complementary skills, trust factor would be the key things for it. And then finally, you got to have this as well, but capability. You want to make sure that the other party can deliver what they were there to deliver, and if not, they can readjust and move at a quick pace to get things done. And I think those are the three key things I would look for in a business partnership, and that's why I think we were very gung-ho in jumping into this, because I think we had that laid out very clearly. So I think we've heard a lot about this. I think what we'll do also is we'll make sure that we put snippets of how the software works, so people can see, as we were talking, how Autoquote and how in real time is generating quotes for customers. I can't wait to see this piece of software be implemented across all over the world, helping a lot of small business owners for 3D printers, get prints out to the world. I think this would make actually a big difference in 3D printing's original premise, which was kind of distributed manufacturing. I think that was one thing that made it difficult for adoption early on, was how do we get people to all become their own little businesses? And I think this will certainly help. So Felix, I want to get a few parting words from you. I guess my question to you was, what makes you qualified to make a tool like this?
It's funny. What makes me qualified? Really just, I have a passion for building and delivering something that people want to use. I think I have a pretty proven track record of doing that, outside of kind of the 9 to 5 and on the 9 to 5. My career path has been very all over the place. I went from being a manufacturing engineer to a manufacturing engineer in another industry. So I went automotive, then I went to just making cabinets, to being a sales engineer at Talk3D, and kind of that role really evolved into something else as well. And then from there, I made the jump into software engineering, and I'm a quick learner, and I love building, and I love seeing people just delighted by the thing that they're using, and just kind of somebody coming back to you and saying, that saved me 3 hours a day, and that is because you did something, like that just makes me so happy. And I think that's what Autoquote does. And on top of that, I have if we want to just go with the traditional kind of things here, I have a mechanical engineering degree, I have a computer science degree, I have over 3 years of experience in software at this point. Currently, I work at Amazon as a software engineer as well. So I have the proven track record to deliver results, and I have the knowledge and also experience to do those things. So I really think that's what makes me qualified to create a software like this, between the software engineering experience and my experience in the 3D printing world. So yeah, that's why I'm able to create Autoquote3D, get buy-in from people like you, right? Getting partners like you. So it's exciting, and Autoquote3D is priced to be in the starter pack, at least, like the price of like a McDonald's meal. So it's really not expensive, and that's what, if you want to sacrifice a little bit of money per month to make some more money on the side with 3D printing, Autoquote3D can do that for you. So yeah, I'm super excited to see where Autoquote3D is in a year. Maybe we can do this again.
Sounds good. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot for that one. It wasn't to ask you if you were qualified to do this, but I think what people heard through all of that was that you're just really passionate about it. You're really passionate about helping people. You've been in the industry, so you know what needs to be done to make it effective for people like us using a piece of software. So I really want to thank you for that, in creating this and putting a lot of effort and faith into something where, if you're outside of the 3D printing industry, this just doesn't make sense. Who cares? But when you're inside and quoting things for people, this is every day, all the time, 24/7 that we're dealing with. And it could be a much more pleasurable, faster experience. And I think through Autoquote3D, we've been really able to do that. So thank you for joining me again today, Felix. Love to have you on a year from now and see what else is new. But for people who are looking to get this piece of software, you can go to autoquote3d.com and look at how it works and sign up for a subscription and get started, within half an hour. Or you can talk to our team at Shop3D who can also set you straight. But Felix, thank you for joining us again at Talk3D, and we'll see you next time.